In a shocking turn of events on Egghead Island today, Vinsmoke Sanji of the Straw Hats has been found guilty of kicking an old man in his old man head and has been sentenced to being eaten by a horse as punishment. Meanwhile, Nico Robin comes face to face with a man whose voice she heard that one time. Jewelry Bonny is tired of being small and is now big. Elsewhere, Zoro got lost, so he's not in this chapter. And according to Dr. Vegapunk, this is the end for the One Piece world as we know it. This is the chapter I was looking for last week. Now I can say that One Piece is back, just before it goes on break again. So the big cliffhanger of the last chapter is immediately and thankfully answered as we finally see Vegapunk's colossal head in a jar, the one that serves as the database for all of Punk records, and honestly, it's a lot smaller than I expected it to be. I don't know why, but I was thinking that his brain was closer to the size of the island itself, just because of the sheer amount of knowledge that the Vegapunks take in per minute. So I guess this devil fruit isn't as much of a curse as I initially thought, but it's still, not great, because the whole growing head thing would very much encourage me to become even more ignorant out of fear that my head would continue to get bigger and bigger. And a very important question is raised here, one that continues to be the theme of Egghead, which is what does it mean to be dead, or alternatively, what does it mean to be alive? Because Vegapunk's brain is still chugging away in that jar, despite the potential demise of the rest of the organs that were once attached to it. And if the brain contains all of the memories, then is Dr. Vegapunk now the exact reverse of Bartholomew Kuma? Kuma currently exists as a shell missing his memories and brain activity, whereas Vegapunk currently exists as brain activity missing a shell. And just saying, I do see a potential solution here. Hook up Vegapunk's brain to Kuma's body and let's just see what happens. Probably not good things. Maybe it'll be like that episode of Star Trek Voyager, where a new being was born from two crew members and Captain Janeway had to euthanize him in order to get them back. Alright though, we have so many different locations to check in, like at least 7, each providing very fun updates of their own. And the first location we catch up with is Syrup Village, and I have to say, Kaya is looking elegant as crap. I love this outfit, and her expression looks so much more mature as she gets closer and closer to becoming a doctor. I do wonder where she's been studying. Syrup Village can't possibly be big enough to have a whole medical training facility. And it's also great to see Merry, because the most recent time I've seen him was in the live action where he was quite brutally murdered. So it's nice to remember that yes, he still exists, unlike the ship that was named after him by him. And just a cool little detail, if you look closely at Kaya's Denden Mushi, it's actually decorated as the Going Merry, which I find quite bittersweet because yes, it's been almost 18 years since I originally read the chapter featuring Merry's funeral, and yet I am still not over it. Come to think of it, I wonder if Kaya and Merry know that the Going Merry was destroyed. I'm not sure if they do because I don't know if the Thousand Sunny has ever been pictured in a newspaper. There's no real cause to. All of the bounty images are taken while the crew are on an island, so the ship is never anywhere to be seen with, of course, the exception of Frankie, which speaking of, we get to visit Karakuri Island in Paradise, which is where Frankie was sent during the time skip. And they actually, because of his wanted poster, they actually believe that Frankie has now become a ship. They know him well enough to know that that is definitely a thing that Frankie would do, and in the bad timeline of One Piece, Frankie does go on to do this, having fully converted himself into a ship by age 60. And I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like the figure in the bottom left of this panel may even be wearing a Thousand Sunny mask, or I guess to them, a Frankie mask. It's sort of like how the citizens of the Torino Kingdom started dressing up like Chopper's alter ego Chopper mask. And we do visit the Torino Kingdom as well in this chapter. And what's really cool is that they seem to be very, very aware of Dr. Vegapunk, like much more so than the people living in most of the world, especially East Blue, which continues this trend of portraying the Torino Kingdom citizens as outwardly primitive. However, they're actually one of the most advanced civilizations on the planet when it comes to medical and scientific knowledge. It almost feels like they choose not to pursue the kind of science that Vegapunk did, because they mention how it's been used to create all of these horrible weapons. So maybe they're just this utopian society that is smart enough to never go down a path that they know will lead to destruction. Like what's happening right now with Emu and his super weapon, which is very much supporting Vegapunk's prediction that the entire world is going to sink. That's a bit of a worry, but one thing you never need to worry about in the One Piece world? Mother's Day. You never hear anyone worrying about what to get Belmere, Otohime, Sora, Olvia, Rouge, Scarlet, Toki, Banchina, or Crocodile. No one needs to worry about them for obvious reasons. But you do have to worry because Mother's Day is coming up very soon, which means that you have a problem. And problems demand solutions, and solutions demand your attention. And the solution is the sponsor of today's video, Holzkern, who specialize in making mothers say, wow, you got me a present, and it's actually good for a change. You know what? I'm gonna put you back in the will. And I've actually conducted some scientific testing on this, because I got my mom an Aquarel bracelet for her birthday because green is her favorite color, and it worked, but don't take my word for it. Just listen to this testimonial.
Thanks to Holzkern, my son is no longer a disappointment.
And Holzkern have over 1,000 products to choose from, such as watches, jewelry, handbags, bracelets, rings, all uniquely made from natural materials such as wood, stone, and shiny metals. And mate, mums go wild for shiny metals. And they also come packaged in these incredibly tangible, satisfying boxes. I could and probably will do this all day. And while I'm doing that, you should click the link in the description or scan the QR code and secure your mother's love by using code GLR to get a 15% discount off your Holzkern order, and make sure to order by May 7th to get them delivered in time for Mother's Day. Because do you have any idea the pain your mother went through to bring you into this world? After all of that, she at the very least deserves a pigment necklace. Plus, Holzkern have genuinely great products, and they directly support our ability to bring you the best fictional pirate content possible. So make sure to go and buy your mother's love this year. But for now, it's back to you. Me. In stark contrast to the utopian Torino Kingdom, we then move to Hachinosu, where barely anyone is even listening to Vegapunk's message. And sadly, we don't see any of the Blackbeard pirates, Kuzan or Garp. But I do think it's a cool juxtaposition to go from the most chill, laid-back, and kind society on the planet to the most chaotic and brutal one. And it's entirely possible that Hachinosu will be the only country on the planet not to hear this message, because they just can't stop fighting each other, not even for 10 minutes. I should also mention that we take a quick stop at Reverse Mountain to see both Crocus and Laboon listening to Vegapunk's message, and I love the idea that Laboon is so invested in whatever Vegapunk has to say, although I guess it's more because it concerns Brook. He's part of Luffy's crew and very much at the center of this whole mess right now, so Laboon is probably less concerned with the truth of the world, especially since it benefits him. He could swim anywhere if the whole world was underwater, but he's probably more concerned for the fate of his afro-clad friend. And then we see a character who I did not expect. The glorious return of Iron Mask Duval, a character who we have not seen since the very first post-time skip chapter. In fact, the last time we saw him, he was recovering from some pretty serious injuries that he sustained whilst guarding the Thousand Sunny. But on Sabadi, a very dangerous connection is being made. Probably not just on Sabadi, but this is the place where we see it happen. There's a random civilian freaking out that, oh no, Vegapunk is dead. And then Duval saying, hang on, the last we heard of Vegapunk, Luffy had taken him hostage. And unless Vegapunk says otherwise, which I don't think he can because this was recorded before he dies, he didn't even know who was going to kill him, this is going to lead people to believe the worst, that Luffy is the one who killed Vegapunk. If they don't personally know Luffy, then that is just what makes the most sense with the information they have. The only real hope for something other than that would be Big News Morgan's to spin the story into a situation where Luffy becomes the protagonist. However, it appears that he may have lost all control. One of my favorite parts of this chapter was definitely the Big News Morgan's panel, and it's because everyone in this world right now has a common crisis going on. We're currently locked in a struggle on Egghead Island that will decide the future of the planet, and every character who matters is either watching or listening to Vegapunk's message, ready for a huge revelation that is going to change their lives forever. That's the global crisis. But Big News Morgan's has his own personal crisis happening, because he's seeing what Vegapunk is doing right now with his fancy new broadcast nails, and Morgan's has realized that the print news business is dead, because there is now a quicker and more efficient way for people to get the news. Vegapunk has created a method that can reach pretty much everyone in the world simultaneously, and most importantly, without going through the Big News Morgan's editorial declension. Morgan's is seeing his storytelling ability being ripped away from him, and this isn't good for us either. Morgan's isn't exactly, fair and balanced, but there is some chance of truth being reported through his outlet, whereas with the world government in charge, there is zero chance of that, which I think might be the future we're heading towards. Should Egghead Island not have to be blown all the way up, the world government will gain access to these new Denden Mushi, as well as Vegapunk's mechanism to broadcast messages instantaneously throughout the planet. And if they still have York at their disposal, then making all of this technology work will not be an issue at all. So we may actually be heading towards quite a dark future, where everything in One Piece becomes strictly world government sanctioned news. They get their own anchor on air 3 times a day and deliver you sweet propaganda. And their information gets out into the world faster than Morgan's can counter or augment the narrative with his comparatively slow bird-based newspaper system. Or alternatively, if a good Vegapunk survives the Egghead incident, then we could see them team up with Big News Morgan's, who could then make a pivot to his own television network. Either way, what we're seeing in this one panel is the future. One Piece is of course a series about generational change, and it looks like this could be the beginning of the end for the old newspaper business. And continuing the billion characters we see during this chapter, We also have the Germa Kingdom featuring Caesar Clown, co-founder of Neomads, an organization whose purpose has evaporated even quicker than the group itself formed. During this very arc, we spent a whole cover story leading up to the alliance between Caesar and Judge, and they ultimately did come together with the communal goal of taking revenge on Vegapunk. And it feels like such a long time ago that happened, but I wonder what their goal shifts to now, or if Neomads both forms and dissolves in the very same arc. My guess is that after Vegapunk's message, Caesar and Judge may very well turn their attention towards the world government. Because both of them have betrayed the world government in the past, they're not exactly in their good books. Caesar Clown through his actions on Punk Hazard, and Judge by trying to form an alliance with Big Mom. So whatever Vegapunk says, maybe it triggers some sort of gasp scientific outrage, and Neomads becomes the enemy of our enemy and therefore our allies for the final war. Back to Egghead now. This chapter had two incredibly hype moments for me, and they both happened to Saint Ethan Baron Venus. So I think that we can all agree that Sanji's had a bit of a roller coaster time on Egghead. Some very high highs and some less low highs. But shit on a stick, Sanji's kick was amazing. Seeing him thwack Ethan in the face is exactly what I crave from someone who claims to be one of the wings of the Pirate King. It was so damn good. It's such a well-drawn action shot, and I don't care if Ethan ends up regenerating or recovering from this damage instantly. In this moment, he is feeling it. And I personally think that it's very important that we continue to support assaulting these old men at all costs. Because it's in moments like this, you can tell they've been sitting at the top for far too long. I mean, as the god of finance, Ethan has probably spent more time using his calculator than wielding his sword in the last however many, potentially even hundreds of years. These old men are rusty. They probably have tons of battle experience, but what they lack is recent experience. They don't have the sheer mastery of form that someone like Kaido who lived and breathed battle does. Then you combine that lack of recent experience with that shocking quantity of arrogance, the whole belief that they're the gods and no one can even come close to their power. You combine those two and they are making a lot of combat mistakes. It's sort of like how I think of Big Mom. She's one of the strongest people on the planet, but she lacks the intelligence to wield that strength. And with the Elder Stars, they're also some of the most powerful people, but they lack the recent experience to fight effectively and efficiently at the very top levels. So good on Sanji for that truly spectacular moment. Although with that said, this is pretty much exactly what I said would happen. I said that Sanji would be the one to come in for the quick save, but then Sanji himself wouldn't be enough and we'd need to find another solution. To give him the most credit I can because he absolutely deserves it, the fact that Sanji is tanking Ethan, biting him in full demon form, is not something that just anyone in the world would be able to withstand. And I think it has to be because of Sanji's genetic modifications and extreme durability kicking in. If this had happened to anyone else, I feel like they'd definitely now be missing 3/4 of their stomach. But again, we still needed another solution. And what I did not expect was for this next solution to be Jewelry Bonny. After having been inspired by Luffy, Bonny makes fantastic use of her imagination and becomes a giant. And she even looks like she's doing a similar pose to the initial giant Luffy art from Onigashima. Her devil fruit it's insane. I know we all speculated that yes, she could probably do this, but seeing it in action is still like, ugh. And I love that Oimo and Kashi are forced to look up, because it's really not easy to make giants look up. And now what I really want to see is a Luffy Bonny giant team up. And I really cannot state enough how much I love this direction for Bonny, and how she will only continue to spiral upwards and upwards in terms of power and abilities the longer she spends with Luffy. So we're also getting to the point where Jewelry Bonny is kind of like a backup Joy Boy, because theoretically there's nothing Luffy can do that Bonny can't. So no matter how hard the world government tries, the dawn of the world is going to come around eventually. Again, right now, this isn't our permanent solution though. Even with Sanji, Oimo, Kashi, and Bonny, we are still up against an Elder Star, and a 12-year-old girl is not going to be enough no matter how big she is. So with this current team, we would be lucky to get away without any fatal injuries. However, they're not the group currently in the worst position. That would be Usopp's group, who are currently doing everything they can to not die against Saint Saturn. But this right here, this is the Straw Hats at their peak. They have such an abysmal combination of crew members to handle this task, but they're all coming together and standing strong because they know that they need to protect Robin. So the usually scared and soiling themselves weakling trio do not hesitate to leap into combat with a demonic spider. And it's a bit of a shame that Robin isn't currently up and running, because she could have taken this opportunity to defeat her second spider yokai, but I guess that will have to wait. Even if she was up, I think she'd be a bit psychologically paralyzed by the realization that yes, she has heard Saint Saturn's voice before. And it was him. I went back on the Ohara flashback chapters, and Saturn's silhouette is in the foreground replying to Clover's hypothesis. I don't know if that was intentional and Oda always knew that this was the elder that Robin would encounter first, or if Oda just got very lucky. I think it's probably the second, but it does bring things together very, very nicely. To look at things from the other perspective, for Saturn, encountering this group is much more of a chore because he says, ugh, Nico Robin. Mate, this is just what I needed. To clean up the mess my stupid dog left on the floor. Should have trained him better. No, wait, he should just be better. Stupid Sakazuki. Can't even grow a decent mustache. And while all of this is happening in Saturn's mind, the rest of the Straw Hats are just staring at him blankly, wondering what's going on in there. I do love that Saturn specifically blames Sakazuki though. I find it hilarious because you just know that Robin escaping Ohara probably haunts him on a nightly basis as well. As someone who treasures the concept of thorough justice, this was one incident where he was slightly less than thorough, and that one mistake now threatens to be the key to toppling the entire world government. And look, I understand his night pains. Sometimes I have trouble getting to sleep because I can't stop thinking about something stupid I said in a social situation, and then I think about all the ways that I could have managed that better, just like how Sakazuki probably thinks about all of the ways he could have murdered that 8-year-old child. But now we were one chapter late on our original prediction, but the message has finally started, and we're only a couple of lines in, but already this has changed how we view all of One Piece going forward, because Vegapunk says that the world will sink into the sea, which, the way he puts it, looks like quite a lovely fate, because the final image of the chapter is a shot of the sea floor with all sorts of smiling fishies, a whale, and happy mermaids doing whatever it is that mermaids do, which is conflicting because it gives the impression that this is the good outcome. The one where the whole world sinks into the sea is what we want to happen? ? If it wasn't for the mermaid panel, I would be taking this as confirmation of Imu's plans for the world. Ever since he was introduced, Imu was theorized to have a connection to the concept of an umibozu and sea gods in general. And then after using his weapon on Lucia, the sea levels did rise and took us 1 meter closer to Vegapunk's prediction here. Maybe that's Imu's extremist plan to deal with the lingering will of the ancient kingdom. You know, all of the devil fruit users and such that they probably made. A simple solution to dealing with all of them would be to drown them all, along with everyone else. Why not? And I tell you what, this is great news for Arlong if he's listening to this in whatever prison he's being held in, because this is the sort of thing that he can very much get on board with. But this could be looking far beyond just this planet. Given that the Elders do have this planetary theming alongside the ancient weapons, perhaps what Vegapunk discovered has to do with some sort of planetary alignment, either literally or metaphorically, but bringing all of these powers together at a fated time and place to plunge the world into water. Again, it's so easy to assume that this is the evil plan because it sounds so apocalyptic, but what if this is somehow the good ending? Well, we're going to go through all of that, as well as pick apart the other curious things that Vegapunk has said in the next video. And also, don't forget to buy your mother's love with a gift from our sponsor, Holzcone. Genuinely great stuff, and you can check them out through my link in the description.